what was the purpose in ancient times when reading the Torah for a meturgeman? Were there Jews from different parts of the world? Okay. So the Midrash, the Midrash Onkelos, or Targum Onkelos, it's called, is many people think that, myself included at some point, that Onkelos wrote the Targum Onkelos, but that's actually not true. The Targum was actually given to us at Mount Sinai, but then many years later it was lost, and Onkelos, the convert, brought it back with his kedusha and wisdom that he had. He brought it back to the world, if you will. So now, what is in essence this Targum Onkelos? The biggest difference between Targum Onkelos versus, let's say, the commentary by Rashi is that while Rashi gives you details of commentary details, him and the Ramban and the Chizkuni and the Midrash Rabbah and all of these other Midrashim, while they're giving you a lot of commentary about behind the scenes things that are happening that you're not perhaps reading clearly in the verses, that the Targum Onkelos is in essence explaining to you literally what's being said here. And that's in essence what we got at Mount Sinai. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu's language, the way He speaks, is not the way people spoke. It's not the way we speak. Even if somebody is his first language is Hebrew, and even if he not only speaks Hebrew, but he knows Torah. If he's one of the Chachamim, he still doesn't speak like the Torah. He doesn't speak the same conversation like the Torah. He doesn't speak Sfat HaKodesh, because we don't speak that way. It's just not the way that we communicate. So many times, a person that does not know Sfat HaKodesh on a high level is not going to understand what is the literal translation, not commentary, but translation of what's being said here. Like, what is this actually saying here? Because it's God talking and it's not a human being, meaning that if it's God talking, we can't miss what He's saying. We have to know what He's trying to tell us here. Or if it's a person talking, if you don't want to pay attention, you don't necessarily have to. It's disrespectful, but nonetheless, it's not your life is not on the line like it would be if it's God talking. So at Mount Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu got both the written Torah and the oral Torah, and part of the oral Torah was the Targum, which is in essence telling us what's being said here, literally. No commentary background, but rather just literally what the verse means. So in previous generations, and really only until recent history, maybe the last 100 years or so, and there are some traditions like in Morocco that still do it to this day, in Yemen that still do it to this day, where when the Baal Koreh would read the Torah scroll in public, he would read a verse or a few verses and then stop, and then there would be a meturgeman, which is somebody else that would tell people what did he just say. Not because they didn't speak Hebrew, not because they didn't speak Sfat HaKodesh, but to make sure that they understood what is actually being said here. Because the language of the Torah is not everyday language, even for the ones that spoke Hebrew. It's not everyday language because Hashem uses a clean language. So, for example, many times in the Torah, Hashem uses words that are the opposite of what they mean, specifically to keep them clean. Or, better yet, there is no words to describe the specific things in the world. For example, the male member or the female sex organ, there is no word in the Torah for it. There is no Torah. There is words that imply it, but there is no words in the Torah that are specifically that. Like in the streets of today, unfortunately, there's 500 descriptions for it in Shem Yishmo, because people have a filthy mind. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He doesn't have specific words for certain things because He speaks in a clean language. Same thing goes when He's talking about women and men that are promiscuous. So when he says that it's forbidden for a woman to be a promiscuous, he doesn't say it's forbidden for a woman to be a promiscuous, but he says it's forbidden for her to be kedisha. Now kedisha, if you don't know what's the content of that particular verse, actually means holy, which is the opposite of promiscuous. So Chachamim explained to us, obviously it's not forbidden to be holy, but rather Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want to talk about his children in such a way, so he's in essence using the opposite of that word, the opposite of it. Same thing is used also in the Gemara. Many times in the Gemara, when it talks about Chas v'Shalom, that if Am Yisrael makes certain sins, they will get punished. What does it do? It does the opposite. It learned from Hashem. So the Chachamim, they say, if Am Yisrael does this, then all of their enemies will be destroyed. Now, of course, if Am Yisrael sins, all of their enemies are not going to be destroyed. But we don't want to write that Am Yisrael is going to be Chas v'Shalom destroyed. So that's what the Chachamim followed, in essence, their Father in heaven, and used the same format. So the Meturgeman, the translator, is not translating it from Hebrew to a different language necessarily, but rather is simply telling you what the verses mean in your day-to-day language. And that was called originally Targum, and then later on, at the time of Onkelos, it was renamed to be Targum Onkelos because he's the one that brought it back to the world. Hazak Baruch on the question.
את ראש הארגון, הרב ירון בן דוריס, יהי רצון שנוכל אשר לפני ישכיל ויצליח, יעלה מעלה, ייתן לו הקדוש ברוך הוא שפע גדול של פרנסה טובה, מקדש בתורה ויראת שמיים, אמן כן יהי רצון.